Jaime's nickname of the Kingslayer is something he gained when he was only 17, so 15 years before the start of the series. His dreams of becoming one of the heroic and honorable knights in all the tales ended the moment he broke his oath, and he killed the king he swore to protect. He hates this name since it's used as an insult and as a way to look down on him and remind him what he is. But his story is a complicated one. Jaime has always been his father's pride and joy. Tywin Lannister always had high hopes for his twins. Cersei would be the queen, and Jaime a knight and the next lord of Casterly Rock. Tywin would make it his life's work to make this a reality, and things were looking like it would happen. The twins have always been admired for their good looks. Cersei, who was born just before Jaime, looked so similar to her twin brother that even Tywin had trouble telling them apart when they were young. I'm sure this had a lot to do with the fact that Tywin was living in King's Landing during this time, so he probably didn't see them much, since he was the hand of the king to his childhood friend Aerys II. George Martin really wanted to drive home the point of how inseparable the twins were by writing that Jaime came out holding his sister's foot during the birth. Jaime has always been witty and a very skilled swordsman, but had some bad qualities to his character too. He's impatient and doesn't take anything seriously. He is great with words, but doesn't share the same level of intellect as his father and little brother Tyrion. At the young age of 8, the Lannister kids lost their mother Joanna after she gave birth to Tyrion. While Cersei was always cruel and hateful towards her little brother, Jaime was kind and loving when very few were, especially their father Tywin, who saw him as the reason for Joanna's death and an embarrassment to his family. Right after the death of their mother, the Princess of Dorne came to visit Casterly Rock with her children Oberyn and Elia Martell. The Martell siblings were a few years older than the Lannister twins, but just as inseparable. They heard stories about Tywin's newborn monster and wanted to see the imp for themselves.
We met, you and I, many years ago.
I think I would have remembered that.
Unlikely, you had just been born. The whole way from Dorne, all anyone talked about was the monster that had been born to Tywin Lannister. A head twice the size of his body, a tail between his legs, claws, one red eye. The privates of both a girl and a boy.
Cersei was saying that she hoped he would die soon and hurt the newborn. She only stopped when Jaime told her to. The Martells were there to negotiate a possible betrothal between Cersei and Oberyn, and with Jaime and Elia, something the Princess of Dorne and Joanna previously worked out before her death. But Tywin was holding Cersei to be Prince Rhaegar Targaryen's wife and wanted a better match for his heir, so turned them both down and offered Tyrion for Elia, which was seen as an insult. Tywin would get served as karma years later when Cersei would be rejected as Rhaegar's princess, and Jaime turned down to squire for Rhaegar. Ironically enough, it would be Elia to marry Rhaegar and become a princess. Tywin was able to find a beneficial match for Jaime, however. Funny enough, he was planning to marry him off to Lysa Tully. Just imagine that relationship playing out, and the funny dialogue that would come from it. Jaime was even sent to Riverrun to spend time with Lysa and the Tullys. The two sat beside each other during every meal, but Jaime was only ever interested in Cat and Lysa's uncle, Brendan Tully, and all his war stories. Brendan, nicknamed the Blackfish, was a well-known knight, so Jaime was just fanboying over him, like he did with all the famous knights in all the stories. But King Aerys would ruin Tywin's plans yet again, something he enjoyed doing to his hand for his own enjoyment. Aerys, now commonly referred to as the Mad King all over the Seven Kingdoms, named the 15-year-old Jaime Lannister to the Kingsguard. This was all Jaime ever wanted. He's a born fighter, not a lord who has to deal with all the boring work. But he would find out his appointment wasn't recognition of his talents, it was another slight on his father. The Mad King already crushed Tywin's hopes of Cersei marrying Rhaegar, and now he took his heir from him. Since a Kingsguard member serves for life, without marrying or holding any titles or lands, this would make Tyrion the new heir. Tywin was furious, but kept his composure and politely left his position as Hand of the King and returned home to Casterly Rock. The future alliance with the Tullys was now over, but it's not like Jaime wanted Lysa anyways. He only had eyes for Cersei. The twins were not only inseparable as children, but also experimented in the bedroom with one another when they fell asleep together. Their mother Joanna found out through a maid catching them in the act when they were very young, but she never told Tywin. Joanna only separated them within the castle and threatened to tell their father if they ever did it again. They were free to be together again and fall in love after Joanna's death. It would be their aunt Jenna, Tywin's younger sister, to look after the three Lannister kids afterwards. Jenna was fairly close with her older brother Tywin during this time, until she mentioned to him that Tyrion was more like him than Jaime ever will be. After being turned down to squire for Rhaegar, Jaime would live with Lord Summer Crakehall and squire for him at the age of 11. The Craighalls are one of the Lannisters' prominent bannermen in the Westerlands, known for their strength and skills on the battlefield, so it made sense. The only details we get about his time within the Craighall castle is that a larger boy, who was the castle bully, tried to bully Jaime, but that didn't work out for him. This bully was Merritt Frey, who I made an entire video about a couple weeks ago. He's a hilariously sad character, and I'll link to that video at the end of this one if you want to check that out. Jaime hated the other squire, Merritt Frey, for all his bullying ways. Jaime seems to have started off as a great kid, with being the only one to respect Tyrion and hating bullies. During the last of the 4 years he spent squiring for Lord Craighall, Jaime would experience his happiest moment in his life. He already earned himself a reputation after winning a tourney melee at the age of 13, but at the age of 15, he would help defeat the Kingswood Brotherhood. In a forest near King's Landing, called the Kingswood, an outlaw band began attacking travelers and highborns. The Brotherhood became so dangerous that Barristan Selmy and Arthur Dane of the Kingsguard were charged with defeating them. While his fellow squire Merritt Frey was making a fool of himself, Jaime was proving to be one of the greatest fighters in the Seven Kingdoms. One of the more dangerous outlaws was about to kill Lord Summer Craighall, but Jaime was able to save him. He even briefly crossed swords with the most famous member of the Kingswood Brotherhood, called the Smiling Knight. Jaime describes him as his generation's mountain. It would be Arthur Dane to defeat the madman who was the Smiling Knight. After the successful campaign, Arthur knighted Jaime himself. He was Jaime's hero and everything he wanted to be. Arthur Dane may not have been the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, but he was the most skilled and deadliest fighter in the realm. With Jaime now a knight, he was free to return home to Castle Rock since he no longer needed to serve Summer Craighall. He stopped by King's Landing on his way back home to visit Cersei, who was now living there with their father. It was Cersei that first put the idea of joining the Kingsguard into Jaime's head. There was a vacant spot, and if he was sworn in, they could live together in King's Landing and love each other since he couldn't marry. Not sure how Cersei the schemer did it, but a month later, the Mad King wanted Jaime on his Kingsguard. He did it to slight Tywin, but Cersei must have planted that seed. Jaime would be sworn in by the Lord Commander Gerald Hightower during the tourney at Harrenhal in front of a large crowd. The youngest ever sworn in, though not for his skills. The Mad King would further insult the Lannisters by forbidding Jaime from participating in the tourney, so he wouldn't gain any glory. Instead, he was forced to ride back to King's Landing to guard over his wife Rhaella and young son Viserys. The older knight, Gerald Hightower, offered to go instead so the young Jaime could participate, but the Mad King insisted it would be Jaime. Things would get even worse for Jaime when he found out Tywin resigned as Hand of the King and would return home to Castle Rock with Cersei. He only agreed to join so he could be with Cersei after being separated for so long, but he would find himself alone in the capital. Here he would truly get to know the Mad King. Aerys always wanted him close where he could see him, since he was extremely paranoid. The Mad King and Queen rarely shared a bed, but one night when Jaime was standing guard, he heard the Queen's cries as Aerys raped his wife. Jaime began to question his duty, not knowing if he should defend her, until his sworn brother, Jonathan Darry, reminded him that they should protect her, but not from the king. During Robert's rebellion, while all the other Kingsguard fought on the battlefield, Jaime stayed by the Mad King's side in the Red Keep as a sort of hostage. Jaime tried to fight in the war, but with Tywin not aiding the Targaryens or even responding to the messages, Aerys would never let him go. The Mad King realized he may lose this war and his city, so he had one last crazy plot arranged. He had his pyromancers place wildfire all around King's Landing in secret. Jaime was one of a handful of men who knew about this. The moment the rebels stormed the city, the Mad King would blow the whole place up, killing every man, woman, and child. It would be Tywin to make it through the city gates first to attack, so the Mad King ordered Jaime to bring him his father's head or he would burn him alive, like he did with everyone his paranoid mind considered to be a traitor. Jaime saw the leader of the pyromancers in disguise, preparing to light the wildfire, so Jaime took out his sword and killed him. He then approached the throne room, where Aerys was in full crazy mode. He asked whose blood was on his sword. He reminded him that if it wasn't Tywin's, he would burn. After Jaime told him whose it was, the Mad King ran to the Iron Throne for some reason, where Jaime was slit his throat. Tywin's men immediately barged in the room, before Jaime could figure out what he was going to say or do next. They asked who he intended to name as the next king. Another Targaryen, Tywin, or Robert Baratheon were all options to Jaime. He believed another Targaryen would be too risky considering their madness. Tywin was never loved by anyone, and the rebellion would just continue if he was crowned. So Robert was the only practical choice in Jaime's eyes, but he told his father's men to name whoever they wanted. He ordered them to tell everyone the king was dead and that the war was over. Tywin was afraid that Jaime would do something rash in his time alone in King's Landing, since it had always been in his nature to do so. And he was right. I'm sure Tywin would have preferred someone else during their hands instead of his son, who he still considered his heir over Tyrion, even though he was a Kingsguard member. For some reason, Jaime decided to sit on the Iron Throne with his sword across his lap, while he waited for the next group to enter the throne room. It would be Ned Stark and his men next. Ned judged him for being an oathbreaker and Kingslayer, while also believing he wanted the Iron Throne for himself since he was sitting on it. Ned just silently rode his horse up to him and waited. Then Jaime laughed and said, "Have no fear, Stark. I was only keeping it warm for our friend Robert. It's not a very comfortable seat, I'm afraid." Ned wanted Jaime sent to the wall and join the Night's Watch for his actions, but Robert decided to pardon him and allow him to remain on his Kingsguard. It's never explained why Jaime decided to sit on the Iron Throne, even though it was clear he had no intentions of claiming it for himself. But his work wasn't done. There were 2 more of the Mad King's pyromancers still around who knew about the wildfire. Jaime dedicated the next couple days to hunting them down, in case they decided to follow through with the Mad King's orders of burning them all. From then on, he would be known as a Kingslayer. Any hope of being a loved hero was lost when he killed the Mad King and saved all of King's Landing. As a child, his father tried to tell him that you cannot eat love, nor buy a horse with it, nor warm your halls on a cold night, but he was never as cold as his father. Jaime's intentions were good, but no one knew the truth, mainly because he didn't tell anyone. If they were going to call him a villain, he may as well play the part. But after all these years of built-up emotions, he let it all out to Brienne, who he just recently met. The Kingslayer, yes, the Oathbreaker who murdered poor, sad Aerys Targaryen, Jaime snorted. "It's not Aerys I rue, it's Robert. I hear they've named you Kingslayer," he said to me at his coronation feast. "Just don't think to make it a habit," and he laughed. Why is it no one names Robert Oathbreaker? He tore the realm apart, yet I am the one with shit for honor. When I came at Rosart, he was dressed as a common man-at-arms, hurrying to a postern gate. I slew him first, then I slew Aerys, before he could find someone else to carry his message to the pyromancers. Days later, I hunted down the others and slew them as well. Bellis offered me gold, and Garrigus wept for mercy. Well, a sword's more merciful than fire, but I don't think Garrigus much appreciated the kindness I showed him. The Knights of the Kingsguard are sworn to keep the king's secret. Would you have me break my oath? Jaime laughed. Do you think the noble Lord of Winterfell wanted to hear my feeble explanations? Such an honorable man. He only had to look at me to judge me guilty. Jaime lurched to his feet, the water running cold down his chest. By what right does the wolf judge a lion? By what right? A violent shiver took him, and he smashed his stump against the rim of the tub as he tried to climb out. "Guards!" he heard the wench shout. "The Kingslayer." Jaime, he thought. My name is Jaime. Jaime hated his new name, and how everyone perceived him, but didn't regret killing the king. He actually believed it to be his greatest achievement. His biggest regret happened about 3 years after Robert's rebellion. In 286 AC, Jaime would have a short visit at Castle Rock, where he would spend time with his little brother Tyrion, who was 13 at the time. Not far from their home, a common girl was being harassed by a group of men on an empty road. Jaime chased after them, while Tyrion comforted the young girl named Tysha. She was only a year older than he was. Tyrion and Tysha would quickly fall in love and marry. 2 weeks after the marriage, Tywin found out his son married a common girl, who he saw as just a gold digger, and made sure to put an end to it. Tywin ordered Jaime to tell Tyrion that she was just a whore, and the whole thing was orchestrated by him, since it was time he became a man and lost his virginity. Tywin had all his guards rape her and pay her a silver coin to prove to Tyrion that she was just a whore. Tyrion was to give her a gold coin after he slept with her last, to prove Lannisters are worth more. Tyrion trusted Jaime, so he believed that Tysha just played him along. This psychologically damaged Tyrion. He believed no one could ever love him, which was the beginning of his drinking and whoring days, and I'm sure some depression. Many years later in the books, Jaime was able to come clean to Tyrion before letting him escape his execution. It seems like this could be the end of their loving brotherly relationship in the books. The show decided to make their farewell not so dramatic and cut this all out, instead replacing it with just a hug goodbye. After being viewed as a villain and hanging around Cersei for so long, Jaime started losing the moral compass he once had. He's fathered all 3 of Cersei's children, even though she married the king, which is a serious crime. This reckless act of treason would endanger all of their lives. His love for Cersei caused him to do his most unforgivable act in the series that we all remember well. It would only be through his time with Brienne would he begin to revert back to his old self before he was the Kingslayer.